and for my money, Suzanne's routine is an example of a deck switch that takes place embedded within a trick itself. Now, those are always a little bit more specific because they have to be so tightly cued to the act. But since Suzanne has an act that is always her act, she can certainly afford to do a deck switch just like that. And when I'm doing a convention show, a formal show, and I'm working for like 800 magicians, I have a deck switches that I use, many of you have seen, that are built right into the middle of a trick, right? And so that's an incredibly powerful way to go. However, I think most of us could use, most of the time, a slightly more adaptable, more versatile deck switch that is designed to happen, not embedded right in between phase 2 and 3 of an effect, but in between one effect and another, right? Alex, is that the way you like to do it as well?
Yeah, I have a few different approaches. My favorite way, I must admit, is do a card trick. How about I do a coin trick? That's the end of the coin tricks. I'm going to move back to a card trick and just bring out a different deck. Gets it done, right? But if you want to use the deck that's in play, then there's a really great one that I think is really cool. This is based on a Slydini thing, and the idea is simple: is that you just have a deck that's in play, and at some point you're going to finish with the card tricks, right? And when I finish with the card tricks, I need the card box, right? And if I have the card box, I can put the cards away into the box and actually be ready for the next thing. So I switched. So this is Slydini's switch, and Slydini's switch is very simple. His idea is that you're going to go for the thing that's in your pocket. And simply all I did is I just switched in my pocket as I went for the card box, right? And I used 2 different decks so you could see the contrast. But very simply, I'm holding a deck in my hand. I'm going into my pocket, and I'm using these loose fingers here. I'm pinching with that first finger and thumb to grab the deck and leave that one behind, right? And Slydini's idea behind this was that not that I'm leaving a deck behind, but that I'm going for that deck. And that as soon as I get that deck, the other thing just falls behind, right? It's an afterthought. The deck that's in play is an afterthought. I'm going for that cold deck. I'm going for that and getting that. And of course, I'm going into both hands at the same time because I'm coming out with the card box here and the deck here. And it's as if I'm just searching for the card box so that I can put the cards away, put them down, and maybe move on to another effect. And then as a second thought, oh, right, I had another thing I wanted to show you with the cards. Take the cards out, and I'm switched, and I'm in play and ready to go. And that's the Slydini idea on the deck switch.
Now, folks, let's give you one idea right here that you can tack right into that to have 2 vastly different approaches, both of which have their purposes. So say you don't want to give it any thought at all. Say you just want to fly and you are not doing a just card act, right? If that's how it is, you can so easily do a card trick, drop the deck in your pocket, pull another trick that's not a card trick out of your other pocket and perform it. And as people are reacting to it, you drop that stuff in your pocket and pull the other deck back out, just like Alex just said. And you can say, oh, thought of another card trick I want to show you. And that is sort of delaying it and breaking in another trick in the middle. That's literally the easiest version of it absolutely possible, right?
And if you're gonna do that method that Aaron mentioned, do yourself a favor and get a piece of card stock so you can have a partition in your pocket with one deck on one side, deck on the other side, so that if you're gonna have that time delay, you know where it's at. And I recommend go for the one that's away. That's the coldest one because it's on the outside. You're going for the cold deck. Give yourself mnemonics so that you don't ever flub these things in actual performance. But that's a great tip. I love that.
And I always use a divider. But now compare that to what Alex just did, the Slydini version. Slydini is card trick to card trick, right? So you're doing the card trick. You reach in your pocket, you pull out the case or the handkerchief or a pen, right? And under that cover, you've got it totally worked out. Now, as Dan McLean has mentioned, Tommy Wonder, that is, of course, the most popular variation, not most popular, but it is certainly the way lots of people choose to apply the Tommy Wonder, the Slydini deck switch these days. Alex, would you be willing to lead us through that one? Because it's the one that I think tends to jiggle the brains of our fellow magicians a little bit because it seems like it shouldn't fool people as badly as it does. But of course, it absolutely
You're talking about this thing, right? Where you have the deck and ready to play. Is that Tommy.
Absolutely not. What you just did was way fancier.
I thought that was Tommy. Whose is that one? I thought that was Tommy Wonder's.
Well, let's talk about that one in a second.
Okay.
Because Tommy Wonder's is simply what you did, except what Tommy Wonder does is he simply reaches in to his pocket and of course I'm not prepped to do it, but of course he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the card case out of the exact same pocket, tosses it out to the audience, and it's completely discrepant, but doesn't require a divider. And you would imagine that it wouldn't fool anybody, but you find that there's a lot of situations where doing the Tommy Wonder version is every bit as easy and fools people every bit as bad, right? So that's kind of the difference, right? But either case, they're both deck on deck.
Yeah.
Right? Deck on deck. Now, one of the things I like to do most is sort of the in-between, sort of an in-between version. And this is just sort of the kind of thing that I will do off the cuff when I'm sort of pinched for a notion. But saw it a long time ago and I really love it. Say stop.
Stop.
Okay. And we'll take 3 people and have 3 people take cards.
Okay.
Right. And, you would go ahead and say, because this is a trick about magical fingers, you go ahead and hand the deck out and you have those cards mixed up and shuffled real good by multiple members of the audience, right? And then what you do is you use ultra sensitive fingers, just the power of your fingertips alone. And you say 1, 2, 3. What was the name of your cards?
2 diamonds, 6 of something, 7 of something.
The 2 of hearts,
yeah.
the 7 of diamonds, and the 2 of hearts. And then as a follow-up, and I was trying to think about this a little bit because, this is one of those things where you're doing a demonstration of a principle, which is not really a trick. And you're trying to keep the whole thing confined a little bit to the topic, right? But what you might do after that what happens when I don't practice. And you get all the cards like that.
Nice.
So this is just in the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks, and it's so easy. You can do it with just one selection, and it's so easy to do that when you need to do something on the fly and you don't want to choreograph anything, but you really almost want to go like within the same card trick. You want the feeling of doing something in the effect, right? You don't want it to do it in between effects. You simply add this phase with either 1 or 3 cards, or 2 cards or 3 cards, whatever you want to do. I did it with 3 just for fun. So in my life, I would probably have this in a memorized stack order, right? And you'll notice that what I did was I had the first 3 cards of that memorized stack in my pocket on top of the deck, right? And then all you have to do, and you could just do it with 1 card, the 4 of clubs. So just say we did it with the 4 of clubs. Anytime you want in your show, you just cut that 4 of clubs to the top and you force it by any method that you like, right? I've shared with you before that I really do like when I'm going to do a simple force to do that multiple cut to displace the card a little bit before either a classic force or a dribble force or something like that, and have that card selected and looked at by the audience. Now you hand those cards to the audience, you have them shuffle the cards briskly as much as they want. Then you just simply drop the cards in your pocket, nothing sneaky, right? And you reach in, quick as a rabbit. I didn't put the right card on top of the deck. That's the card. Everyone applauds. You pluck the deck right back out. No one gives it a moment's thought, right? And you now go into the next phases of your trick. And of course, you can do a false shuffle or 2 or whatever you want, but you've just brought your stack into play, right? So the last thing I would ever actually do with it in real life would be to do a demonstration or a big ending like that right after that switch. But it's a great way that you can get the cards mixed after the trick begins. Say you have an impossible card location, or you want to do something with in memorized deck locations or something like that. Well, you start by forcing a card. You have the cards mixed up and shuffled. You drop the deck in your pocket. You pluck out that one card, and you say, "But now let's try it again. But this time, name a card." The stack is in play. You're ready to go forward with untold mental miracles, right? And so, like I say, that's in the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks, right? And there is one other variation of that that I use all the time, which you all might really like, which is so easy. You pull out 4 cards and you do Twisting the Aces or the Last Trick of Jacob Daly. And while you pull out the 4 cards, you just drop the deck in your pocket. And I do this in jeans all the time, right? I'll have another deck in my back pocket, or Juan will like to stick it underneath his belt, something like that. And you just literally drop the deck into your pocket. And at the climax of the effect, everyone applauds. You just relax, grab the other deck. It doesn't even have to come out of the same pocket. If you always coordinate it to happen right on the reaction to what you're doing, it's absolutely impervious. So quite frankly, if you're liking to wear jeans or tight pants or anything like that, you can literally do that method. And as long as, and these are the 2 black ones and these are the 2 red ones, and everyone applauds, and you reach into the other pocket and pull the deck out discrepantly. In that moment, it's psychologically invisible.
That's right.
And I was reminded of the power of this stuff because that's the only method I use even in the Castle show. And when we were out there last April, which Adam is where we bumped into Larry Wilmore after all those years, and he agreed to come do this talk for us this week. We heard from our friends at the Magic Castle that they were fooled several times during my show, by this exact kind of method, which is not difficult, right? It's actually easy. It's built into every single trick.
Please don't start wearing tight pants, George. We're just not gonna support that here at Conjure Community.
Well, there's a difference between tight pants and flat front trousers, and there are some pants that don't really, like if you have a deck of cards in them, they don't have to be that tight before you would actually see it.
That's right.
Hey, Mark. Oh, sorry, Mir. Hey, Mir from London. Glad you're here. So, one of the very first ones that ever fooled me, Aaron, was this, where you just, of course you have to be seated to do it, where you have the other deck in your lap and you just finish your trick, You're like, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you for the applause. That's awesome. And every time I saw it, I said, did that just happen?
Mm-hmm.
He just on the downbeat. It is literally, thank you so much. The hands drop down and just come up with the other deck. I don't know if that's an actual deck switch or not, but I've seen a couple of magicians.
Sure it is. You put it on, and you can have it loose. You have it between your legs, and you scoot your chair up. And as you scoot your chair up and get closer to the table, that's when you do the switch. And the reality is with any of this stuff, especially when you're talking about magic, deck switches don't really come into the mind of the spectators, I don't think, as a method for anything that you're doing. So I think by its very nature, it's going to fly by most people. It's only when you start talking about gambling and that sort of thing that notion is even part of the discussion, or it's part of someone's mind frame thinking about it,
And for me,
hand would start shaking.
The least exciting thing of all, right, is when a magician takes a beautiful deck switch and uses it as a demonstration of a beautiful deck switch.
Right.
I'm not even into it when you do a color changing deck and call it a deck switch. To me, it's a low-hanging fruit that doesn't get us very far. Now, Alex did do a demo. I want to appreciate you, Randy, for mentioning it. Alex, would you take us through that quick demo you did that we sort of left behind for a moment?
I don't remember whose it is, but I remember seeing this as a real method, is that you would have a deck in play, and then as you're gesturing or you're having someone grab the card box or grab the pen, you say, great, now let's get that pen and have you sign one out of here. And it's just simply just moving one hand into the place of the other one that's in dealing position. But with a little bit of a body turn, everything is fine, right? And you can hide that other deck and ditch it in the pocket and move on with your life.
You guys notice that most of these depend upon boldness and subtlety. Like they're not actually designed. You're not, they're not about hot palming a deck, and ditching it like a false transfer or shovel pass. It's not that kind of thing. You can do that sort of thing, but man, it's not the way to go. Chris Harrop here just mentioned, I used to do this for years. In my Castle Close-Up show years ago, I would use my search and destroy slow motion sandwich routine, because every time the cards move down, you eliminate some cards. So the 2 aces would move down in the pack. Show you guys the exact beats in which it would happen. I find that this is another really great go-to. You just have to be wanting to do search and destroy, right? So you've got your selection is controlled secretly, 6th from the pack. If we have actually a link to that video in the back room, I guess you guys can all look that up in the back room. I put these a few cards up, and I say the idea is to help them not to find your right card, to eliminate all the wrong ones, right? You cut the deck, you complete the cut, you say the magic word, and they move down in the deck, eliminating all those cards, right? And so you'll see it's built right into the trick. We say, how many cards are between those? Look, I'll get rid of these. I'll get rid of these. They're eliminated, right? And you put them.
That's so cool.
Away.
That's a great way to handle this.
And now you hand these cards out. They cut the deck. They complete the cut. They snap their fingers. They spread the cards. They get that. And always it would work the same way. I would say, hey, and often I would have the 2 aces removed from the other deck, right? Or the 2 jokers, right? Whatever it would be. Or the 2 kings, because those of you see me out, I'm always doing it. And that's your card. And of course, everyone would applaud. I would reach back into the deck to get the rest of the cards out and just pick up the other deck.
That's great. I love that. I love when it can be handled with another effect. That's really one of my favorite things with a deck switch. That's so cool.
And the key of having the 2 cards belong in that deck, or having the 4 kings out, and those are the 4 cards that are missing, which, because I would do it with panic, right? And I would always bring up panic, and I would pick these up, 2 kings with the other 2 kings, then go right into panic at that point. Because see how the deck it's not really integrated in. It's not so tightly integrated as what you're going to see when you watch Suzanne's.
Right.
But it's not hard either. It's so easy to just remove the 4 kings from the deck, use 2 of them for the trick, and switch in the other 48 cards.
Your switch totally kills too. Like nobody ever catches that, Aaron. Like that moment is always so priceless, because like, I've seen it a million times, and I'm like, yep, there it went, and nobody saw it. Which is to me is the key great thing about a good deck switch, is nobody ever remembers it in their mind. I mean, that's at least what has to happen, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think that's one of the brilliant things about Suzanne's trick, is that she's sort of taking the deck switch out of the way you would normally use it, because generally I think with a deck switch you want it to be safe with everything that's before it, everything that comes after it, right? It's just a thing that happened. There's a deck that's now doing miracles, and if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have noticed that now this deck that has been switched in is doing the work. She's switching in a deck for the effect, right? Like that's happening in the middle of the thing for the deck to change from an all blank deck to a fully printed deck. That's a pretty ballsy and bold way to think of a deck switch. So, again, kudos to Suzanne, because what a great way to handle it, to make that effect happen. Because I love the ambitious card with the blank deck. It's such a great notion, but to bring it full circle and have it be a regular deck, and then you can move on with regular card tricks. I think that's such a wonderful thing. I told Suzanne when she was here, and I'll say it again, I think it's just wonderful. I think she's wonderful, and what a great magician. I'm so glad she came here to share with us. So cool.